Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar centering Black immigrants in education, learning, acting, and advocating for equity. My name is Tamara Alsace and I am co-principal investigator for the CUNY-Initiative on Immigration and Education, or CUNY-I. And as we get started, I do want to tell you a little bit about CUNY-I. Many of you may be familiar with us, but for those of you who aren't, we always like to remind folks that CUNY-I is a project generously funded by the New York State Education Department and is in year 7 of an originally 5-year project. It is the brainchild of principal investigator Dr. Tatiana Klein, and we work closely in collaboration with the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages and Associate Commissioner Elisa Alvarez. At CUNY-I, we believe that communities and schools are shaped and strengthened by the migration of people and ideas across the globe. Through this project, educators, researchers, families, and local leaders work together to learn about, from, and with immigrant communities, act in ways that center our shared humanity, regardless of legal status, and advocate for equitable policies and opportunities. As a result of this work, we've developed multimodal and multilingual resources that center multilingual communities and immigrant communities that include undocumented, refugee, and asylum-seeking members. The work of CUNY-I is firmly grounded on a set of principles, all of which reflect several overlapping themes that inform our thinking and our work. You can access it through the QR code that's there. And our grounding principles are available in multiple languages at our website, CUNY-IIE.org. Today, we'd like to call your attention to the first and the last principle, which are the focus of our webinar today. Black Immigrant Lives Matter. At CUNY-I, we stand in solidarity with all those fighting for equality and justice in the Black Lives Matter movement. It's important, therefore, to recognize that we must approach this with solidarity in mind, and that although Black immigrants make up the smallest percentage of immigrants in the United States, they are more likely to be targeted for deportation. And by centering the lives and experiences of those who are most vulnerable, we can advocate for equality for everyone. We also want to highlight shifting from ally to accomplice, because our work involves advocating and standing as allies, but moving more to actually understand what is needed for us to do inside and outside of our professional lives to support Black immigrants in our communities. Black immigrant population has almost doubled since 2000, according to the Pew Research Center, and a quarter of Black immigrants of Black Americans are the children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. We have nearly 4.4 million Black non-citizens living in the U.S., which is 20% of the nation's Black population, according to Baji. And Black immigrants are deported at a rate 4 times more often than their numbers would suggest. They're also disproportionately experience racist criminalization and endure tortuous detention conditions. With all of this in mind, we bring this webinar to you today to highlight some of the many of the assets of our Black immigrant communities, some of the challenges and folks that are doing the work. Many Black immigrants speak non-English languages at home, and many are fully proficient in English. Most Black immigrants live in the South or the Northeast, with New York City being the greatest percentage of Black immigrants, with over 1 million Black immigrants living within New York City. Let's go on to the next slide. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists for today. And we are welcoming Astu Tien, Policy and Advocacy Director for the Undocu Black Network, and someone we've been working with this year at CUNY-I. Darnell Benoit, Founder and Executive Director of the Flamboyant Haitian Literacy Project, and Nana Giamfi, Executive Director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, Baji, who provides a lot of the data that we just presented. I'm one of your moderators for today, along with my colleague, Carmina Makar, an associate investigator here at CUNY-I. And just a couple of housekeeping announcements before we begin. Please submit your questions in the Q&A box that is at the bottom of the menu of your Zoom window. We encourage you to share your thoughts and reactions in the chat. And this is being recorded, and we'll share it on our website and with all the registered participants. We also want to thank Daniela Lulema and Maria Jimena Diaz, our colleagues who are helping us behind the scenes today. And I'm going to turn it over to Carmina for the first question.
Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, Astu, Darnell, and Anna, for sharing your time and expertise today. So we want to start off just by asking you to speak briefly about the work your organization does and what the challenges you face at this moment in time are. So maybe if we can go Astu, Darnell, and Nana in that order, we'd love to hear you start with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmina. Oh, sorry, and thank you everyone for being here today. So I am at the Undocu Black Network. We are a national organization that works to ensure that Black immigrants are not only able to survive in the United States, but also have the resources that they need to thrive. And so I lead the policy and advocacy work at Undocu Black, which comprises of policy advocacy at the federal level, really working to, pull those levers at the federal level to make sure that Black immigrants have a pathway to citizenship, access to be able to adjust their status. And so that's a lot of the work that I do, right? I would say lobbying for good on that front. Another aspect of our work in policy and advocacy within my department at Undocu Black is around directly legal services. So we work really hard to make sure that our members are connected with immigration attorneys that we trust and are knowledgeable and are responsible and ethical, to help our members explore options around and learn about different pathways to be able to adjust their status. That is the newer work for us, doing direct legal services, but it's been really rewarding, just to be able to make those connections for our members, and oftentimes being able to connect our members in that way really kind of unlocks a level of their being able to thrive in this country, and not just for themselves, but for their families, for their children, and often, right, for the mixed status families that they come from. So, I think there are lots of challenges in our work. I think in terms of policy and advocacy, our main challenge is just navigating this administration and the current anti-immigrant, anti-Black immigrant rhetoric that is all around us, right? So much misinformation, so much negative policies coming from the administration that continue to harm Black immigrants. And so we are often in a space of rapid response, in a space of having more needs or higher needs than we are able to meet, but nevertheless committed to putting our heads down and trying to serve as many Black folks and Black immigrant folks as possible. So I'll pause there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Astu. Darnell?
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone. I'm Donnell Benoit from Boyan Haitian Literacy Project, and really happy to be here. And thank you for the opportunity to share the work of Flamboyant with everyone here. We were founded in 2005. Me, Donnell, I'm a former English language learner, former Black immigrant student in the public school, also former ESL teacher, and now doing this work of advocacy and organizing and supporting Black immigrant students. This was something that did not exist when I was growing up here in New York City, in Queens, in the 90s. So that's something that always stayed with me. Like, how can we have a space for Black immigrant students? So my work has the work of Flamboyant for the past 21 years has been around that, focused on that. Black immigrant students in the public schools, really struggling. Immigrant students remain the population of students with the lowest graduation rates and the highest dropout rate till today. So it's important for us to support Black immigrant students because I think many people don't fully understand the context of Black immigrant students in the public schools. They're entering a public school system that's already full of biases, discrimination, racism, and so forth from the Black American students in the school. So when Black immigrant students entering the public schools, so they're facing all of that. So we've been able to provide a space to support students, to support their families, to support their dreams, their education journey, supporting them in access to higher education, and then supporting them for access to a career, to opportunities, access to the city, really. So these students, they don't just survive, but they thrive in New York City. So we're local. We live in Brooklyn, but our work is citywide with the New York City Public Schools and then with the Department of Education. Many challenges today, of course, as a Haitian serving organization and working in the Haitian community. So immigration, of course, is center to our work. Well, the community in general is going through a lot right now, a lot of challenges, especially young people. There are many undocumented students in the schools, in our community, and also in our organization as a member organization. So a lot of support, a lot of really having more space for undocumented students.
Thank you so much. Nana, love to hear from you.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I'm so excited to be on with my sisterin. This is going to be a really rich conversation and very excited to be invited. So yes, Nana Gyamfi, she, her, Wono in the Tree language of Ghana. I was born in the United States, but like a Toyota made in Kansas, continue to be Ghanaian, and of course, having family members, friends, etc., that are people who were born outside of this country and have come into this country. I am the executive director of BAJI, which is the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. And we've been in existence now for 20 years. We turned 20 in April. So woo-hoo, happy birthday to us. And the work that we have been doing has really been at that intersection of racial justice and immigrant rights. So we have been doing organizing, civic engagement, which is done by our power building team, which is in New York, in Brooklyn, which is in Miami, in Atlanta, in Houston, in Los Angeles, in Oakland. And then we have our youth organizer that's national, but comes out of Kansas. We also have our policy team, mainly focused on DC, but working also in all of those cities that I described, in those states, trying to make sure, because each of those states are very different, have very different attitudes towards immigration, very different attitudes towards racial justice, and making sure that Black immigrants and the policies that will support us, defend us, protect us, help us to thrive are pushed. We have a legal team that provides direct legal services, but also provides legal workshops and provides legal materials that are translated into many languages that Black folks speak other than English and Spanish. And then we have our communications team, which does the work of narrative building, of storytelling, of making sure that people recognize that Black immigrants, in fact, have stories to tell, have something to teach, have something to bring to the table of how we become in this country the multiracial democracy that they claim that we want to be, as well as how we connect to our people back home in our diaspora here between African Americans and Black immigrants. So BAJI fights for the rights of both Black migrants and African Americans, and we see the way of doing that and changing the conditions of our people by advancing both racial justice and migrant rights. The biggest challenges, I would say, that we're facing right now is really just fighting this authoritarian regime and figuring out, and the authoritarian oligarchy all over, and figuring out how we're able to push back, build the power that we need to block some of what is happening that we know is so detrimental to us, including in the areas of education, but also to build what it is that we want on the other side. And so one of the challenges is the vision, is getting folks to be on the one about that vision and making sure that Black immigrants are included in that vision. Often when people talk about immigration, all the immigrants are brown. And when they talk about Black people, all the Black people are African American. And so the solutions that we're talking about, the things we're talking about in terms of what it is that we're able to do, all of that is rooted in this notion that sees Black immigrants as other, right? And as outside and as in the margin. And so our work as Baji is to make sure that that is not the case, to make sure that whether we're talking about immigration policy or we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about education or we're talking about housing, that what are the concerns of Black immigrants are the concerns of everyone. We firmly believe that when Black people are free, that all people will be free. We firmly believe and see even in this moment that the way to liberation is the way that Black people have always carved in this country over the past 400 years, with and without the support of others. And so very glad to be in this fight on the battlefield with these sisters that preceded me, as well as all of you, to make sure that we get that freedom, that we have the world that we know we need and that we deserve.
Thank you so much. And again, welcome to all of you. We're really looking forward to this continued conversation. So the next question is, what are some recommendations that you would have for educators who may be dealing with aggressive ICE enforcement for themselves or concerned about their students and families? And what practices do you think they might employ, or what might they do to keep themselves and the students that they serve safe? And anyone can jump in first.
I can go because this is something that we deal with all the time. We have 6 school partnerships that we work with, and it's important for us that educators are aware at all times. That's the number one thing. They need to know at all times what's going on in the immigration world. Unfortunately, in the public schools, uh, many teachers, staff, admin people, they don't really know what's going on. Often, the work of immigration is left to the immigrants, so other people don't take it on, and that's not right, especially in a public school system where there is a huge population of immigrants. 15% of the New York City public school students are immigrant students, with a large population being newcomer students, who are new to the country and who have been here for less than 5 years. So it's important for the schools to always be aware of up-to-date information when it comes to immigration, especially for everything that Nana has said. So we need to know, like, the moment that we're living right now is a huge crisis. If schools never took time to learn about immigration, they should. And then all the different groups that are especially affected in New York City, a city of immigrants, like they need to know all the different countries that have TPS, all the different countries that TPS has ended for. I mean, they need to know a whole lot to keep not only the students educated and the parents and the school community, staff, teachers, everyone needs to know what's going on. We recommend for the school to have friendly immigrant posters. They don't have to say anything. The one that I like is one that says, "I heart immigrant." Counselors should have them in their offices. The classroom should have them, because the more comfortable and the more welcome that students feel, so the more comfortable they can, access someone and talk to them about immigration. Because inside the school, that's not something that's allowed. You can't ask students, if they're documented and undocumented, if their families, all that. But in order for you to get that information, It's the student has to feel comfortable with someone. They have to feel safe in the school, that this space is immigrant friendly and I can go to an adult and talk about, my status and what my family is going through. So that's extremely important. The other thing is something, that we've been advocating for forever since the organization started is school community. They go together. The school should know who are the community organizations in their neighborhood, right? Especially if you have a high population of Creole, Haitian Creole speakers or Chinese speakers in your school, you need to know who are the organizations that can support the school community, that can support the students. So schools, community, and also the home, the parents. We need to know what's going on. Can the parents support also? Can you reach out to the families? So that's important. And then, to be culturally sensitive to the students in the school. The schools need to know, about the countries where the students come from. They need to know their language, their culture, because the more they know that, the more they're able to support that student, the more they're able to make the students feel welcome. There is a lot of isolation inside the school. And then everyone, we can't leave the job of connecting with students when it comes to immigration. We can't leave that up to like one specific person. Everyone should be able to jump in, right? Right now, what we're advocating for is an immigrant person, a person dedicated to immigrant students inside the schools, right? That can support them, with social services, that can support them with healthcare, that can support them in everything that an immigrant family or student may need. That's so important because the schools, where there are like, support services with the students for legal and anything else that a student might need, there is so much more success. So we're advocating with the city, with the public school system to expand, right? To have a staff person, especially in schools with high immigrant population, to have this person just dedicated to immigrant students. So those are some of the recommendations.
Thank you so much. And we heartily agree, having promoted the idea of an immigrant liaison position in schools in New York City and throughout the state.
Can I add two things really
Sure,
quickly?
absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you so much for that list. And it's the trust and the having the people there is so important. There's two things I want to add to that. And sorry for my lighting. I'm inside a hotel room because I traveled to be here. But two things that I would want to add. One of the things that I want to add is this conversation around making sure that we know enough about students, that we understand that we have students that are coming from different places. And some people are coming from countries, let's say, for example, a couple of years ago when we had a lot of people coming from Mauritania. People don't know that much about Mauritania. They may not know that much about the students from Mauritania. And students aren't necessarily going to speak up about who they are. So it's like, just because they're Black and they're immigrant doesn't mean they're Haitian. A lot of them are Haitian, but everyone's not going to be Haitian. And once you get outside of what people perceive as the norm, and so you come from Mauritania, you come from some other part of the continent, you come from some other part of the Caribbean, maybe what you speak really is just like real patois. You don't really speak English, right? Standard English or whatever. You speak the language of the Jamaican people or the language of the people from Trinidad. Then suddenly you fade to Black. And so we have so many students that they get math and that's about it. They're very withdrawn. They don't know who they can talk to. They don't speak English well. And there isn't very many classes that are set for you if what you speak is Mauritanian Pular, of which there are many dialects of Pular. But even the basic, there's not that there for you, right? And so I think it's really important that trust, those conversations, whatever is needed to happen to make people be able to be seen and to be able to be heard, whether they speak English or Spanish or Haitian Creole, and be able to know that they have a place, I think is really important. And I would say the second thing in terms of safety is really getting police out of schools. When you have the danger inside the house, it's a lot easier for students to get deported. It's a lot easier for students to be separated from their families, for the family members to be separated from them. And so a lot of the work that Baji does in schools, including with organizations like Advancement Project, who really have led this work, has been about getting people, getting the security, getting police, getting whatever you call the safety officer out of schools and really operating in a way that actually is welcoming, actually caring, and actually helps to address any difficulties, conditions, etc., that are happening on campus.
And
Thank you.
I think, I mean, I'm nodding vigorously at the points that Darnell and Nana have raised. I think the only layer that I would add and put forth here is just adopting. Educators also need to adopt once you get educated, right? Once you learn about the diversity of the immigrant population, once you learn about the diversity of Black immigrants, once you learn about whether ICE is allowed in your school, right? And whether sensitive locations are still being respected, and what it looks like to work around sensitive location memos, for example, being rescinded, and having signage in places that literally articulates where federal agents may or may not be. I think the next space is to move into being advocates, right? I think that it is so important in this time for educators to uplift the stories of the young people that they serve, the immigrant young people that they serve, and the families that they serve. Educators are really potent messengers in this time period of anti-immigrant rhetoric around centering scarcity, of fear mongering. They're really able to cut through it, right, and share what they're seeing on the ground, how ex-immigration policy is making it so that young people are not coming to school, or young people who were normally, right, very motivated, very excited and happy to be in school are now withdrawn because of the trauma that they're experiencing. And so I think that it's really important for educators to step into that leadership of being advocates. And then also, right, if you're an educator that finds yourself in a school where you are not being trained on or educated about immigrants, right? You're not so sure what the policy is should an ICE agent come to the school. You're not so sure, or you're seeing that immigrant students with language needs are not being served in your school. Again, step into that posture of being an advocate to school leadership, to the school board, to the powers that be within the school system to make sure that those resources are made available to you so that you can serve your students, but also are made available to the students and families that are directly impacted. I feel like, oftentimes people think that advocacy is better left to the advocates. And yes, we do our part, but I also think folks grossly underestimate educators and their ability to advocate so well, and to cut through all the noise. And I think that back when I was an educator, right, I grew into that leadership, and sharing my story as a Black immigrant, but also then sharing and uplifting the stories of the young people that I served, and naming the gaps and calling for institutions to also be responsive to the community.
Thank you so much, Astu, Darnell, and Nana. And building on this, what can educators do to move from this ally to accomplice position, and what can they do inside and outside the classroom? Very much in line with what Astu you're saying in terms of advocacy, educators, and then even stakeholders beyond that. If anybody can speak to that.
Yeah, that's really important. Like for me, for our work, I think it's important that especially right now, ICE in the schools, I don't know, like it may happen, but we don't know yet. It hasn't happened, not that I know of. I mean, I'm in a lot of schools. I'm really connected to schools. A lot is being done. For example, there are bells now in the schools. You have to ring the bell and say who you are before they open. Before you could just open and then the security guard will stop you. Now there's another step, right? Before you enter the school. So that's a great thing that they've put. I mean, that's recently this year. But to me, it's especially we work with young adults, immigrant students, Black young adult immigrant students that have full on lives. They're working after school, they're going to internship, fellowship, and so forth. We want them to continue their education and do and move forward, because you can't just stop with everything that's going on right now. What happens on your way to school if ICE gets you, right? What happens after school? What happened to the family that's on their way to school to drop their child off, and they get caught by ICE? What can the school do, right? Do they have access to the principal, right? Do they have access to a teacher? Is there a number? How can the school intervene, right? Because in these situations, we need everyone to intervene. We need everyone to be watching, not just on the school ground. You can in the school ground, when we think about it, most of us who work inside the schools, we're in partnerships and we see the teachers. Yeah, that could be a lockdown, right? And keep students safe. But to me, it's outside. It's on the weekend, right? When that happens, ICE gets a family, a student, and so forth in the school community. What happens? What can teachers do? Do students have a number? Do they have someone, a lawyer? Other schools, sharing information. Can they have access to someone that can really guide them in that situation? So I think all that is important with with ICE challenges now, especially the weekend students have weekend programs that they go to. How can we protect these families? And again, it goes back to what we talked about before: the trust, the advocacy that has to talk about. How can we put all that together, right? The advocacy in the school, everyone has to be an advocate. Our students have to advocate for themselves. That's why having those know your rights, the community defense, to know everything that's going on so they can feel safe. That's all that is important. Having a number of someone in the school that can support them while something horrible like that happens, their families have the school being connected to a community organization that's a legal partner that can support, and the students know that, okay, this organization can support us. So all that is important in really being accomplice and really supporting families going through these challenges.
Yeah. And what I would also add to that is that I think to move from ally to accomplice, I think accomplices are proactive, right? And so it is so important for educators to not just rely on young people, to wait for young people to come and disclose about their status, their parent status, or whatever crisis related to their immigration status that they're experiencing, right? Because then you're putting that young person at risk, right? But an alternative is to make the information available, make immigration resources available to all kids. So without waiting for them to come and say, hey, I'm an immigrant, or hey, I'm undocumented, or hey, my mom's undocumented and I'm really scared, make it available to all kids. And what that does is it normalizes this conversation. As a young person growing up in New York City who was undocumented, none of my teachers ever talked about immigration. No one had even acknowledged that you could be undocumented, right? And so what that did is it fed into this stigma and this othering and even this internal this shame that I felt around feeling othered, right? Or feeling wrong or feeling like I didn't quite belong. And so when educators are proactive about making resources available, about uplifting immigrant stories and naming the thing, you normalize the experience. The other thing is that also right, like Darnell mentioned, there are so many organizations doing the work out there, right? Providing the legal screenings, the know your rights, and the resources. And so educators have to seek out those collaborations to know which resources are relevant to put out there and to make available, right? And if you're limited because you're in a school district, right? I know when you're a classroom teacher, you have people to answer to, right? And so if you are finding yourself that these are needs that are not being met by the school that you're in, again, advocate to your school leaders and to your power structure within your school that those things should be happening, right? If not in the classroom level, at the network level, right? So that's also important. And then also, I think a part of being an accomplice is you yourself doing the work to be mindful to not exclude immigrant students. And it often happens in education inadvertently, but I've always found myself in spaces where X opportunity is created. Maybe there's a scholarship or a trip abroad or some sort of reward or incentive. And you'll see kind of things that are substitutes for immigration status being requirements, right? And then that, whenever you have that, that now eliminates that opportunity for students who don't have status or students whose families might not have lawful status. And so I think it's important to rigorously examine school opportunities, right? And really ask ourselves, is this accessible to all students, regardless of immigration status? Or, oh, if we have this thing that is kind of a substitute for status, right? Why? Does the scholarship really only need to be open to US citizen students? I know that, right? Like there's things with federal money and compliance and all the things, but I've often seen private money and scholarships that have these limitations for no good reason. So I think it's really important again to always ask ourselves as educators, who are we leaving out? And what can we do to eliminate barriers rather than just repeating the status quo or copying the requirements because they've always been the requirements, but really interrogating those things more critically.
I don't know if there's time to add.
Can I add a
Nana, go
couple
ahead.
things? Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted
So
to, okay.
go ahead, go ahead.
I just wanted to add quickly, like the other thing that, advocates, we're talking about in terms of, being proactive, supporting immigrant students and being an accomplice is what happens when the fear hits, because it did before. Like students are afraid to come to school, families are afraid to bring their children to school. Will the schools partner with the families? Can we go back? Can there be a remote option for these students who are afraid to come to school instead of losing days of school and so forth? So there are all those things that schools need to think about. How can they support their immigrant students when there is fear and no one shows up to school? What can we do so the students can continue their education and continue to have that normalcy? So all the different options. Us teachers gonna go to the families' home, to the students' home to give them the packets and support them. So these are all ways that schools should be thinking about the future, especially how things are looking up and what's about to happen. We don't know, but it can get even worse than that. But to have those things in those conversations, to begin those conversations at least.
And I know we're closing out. So just want to say quickly that I think one part that's also important, I'm always going to bring this up, I wouldn't be Baji if I didn't, is that Black immigrants are Black people. We often talk about ourselves and people often talk about us in terms of nationality. But when it comes to the body snatchers, be they ICE, be they CBP, be they federal agents, local police, school police, or the mass mercenaries, what they see are Black people. And we know 76% of Black migrants who are deported or facing deportation are deported on criminal grounds, meaning they're deported because of driving while Black, walking while Black, all of the ways in which Black people are criminalized. Though Black migrants would like to pretend that we are model minorities, none of us have less than an 80-something% rate of deportation that is happening based on criminal grounds. And it's not because we're more criminal, but for the same reasons that we see those disproportionate numbers when it comes to Black Americans. And so being anti-racist, being anti-criminalization, actively advocating on behalf of students who are targeted because of their Blackness is another way that you support Black immigrants, because our issues are not the same as other people's issues. And sometimes we use immigrants broadly, but when we're talking about Black immigrants, there are some things that disproportionately impact us because anti-Blackness is at the crux of this country, including the public education and private education systems at all levels.
Thank you, Nana.
Thank you. Such powerful ideas. Thank you all. Um, we'd like to just move into give you an opportunity to share some resources that you might recommend to our participants to help them better support Black immigrant students and families uh, and do the work to learn the kinds of things that you've been saying would make them more able to support our students.
So I'll put a couple of things in the chat. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
certainly folks should go to Baji's website, which is baji.org. I'll put that in there, baji.org. We also, if you are Instagram, Instabaji is a really great way to follow us. We have a survey that we're doing on the issue of Black immigrants as English language learners. We're really interested to understand what people's experiences are across the Black diaspora, so both the Caribbean, as well as the continent and, you know, all the other places in between. And if you have any information, if you're associated with an organization or you as an educator would like to plug in and help us to talk with folks about what their experiences have been so that we can see some policies that may be supportive to those students, please go to policy@baji.org. And again, I will share that policy@baji.org in the chat. Thank you so very much.
Thanks.
I can jump in next. I would offer three resources. The first, if folks here already are not connected with the National Newcomer Network, I know that that's a space that I see so many faces here, but if you're not, I really encourage you all to follow them. I think they just launched their Instagram page, but also it's a coalition of educators from, I think the last that we checked was like 40 states, right? And they meet every month or so. And it is really like a hub where educators can get up-to-date information that lies at this intersection between education and immigration. So, for example, the sensitive locations memo was rescinded, right? That's the memo that said that I should not be on schools, churches, and other institutions. And then that was turned around, right? The National Newcomer Network would be a space for you to learn kind of what that rescission means and workarounds, right? Based on that rescission to keep schools and to keep schools and students safe. So, want to put that out there for the National Newcomer Network. Second, you can follow us at undocublack on Instagram. Basically, that's where you learn about all of our advocacy and non-advocacy initiatives, right? We offer programming for anybody who wants to join who was a Black immigrant or related to Black immigrants. And so you can learn how to become a member. You can see kind of some of the programming that we make available, opportunities to build community, opportunities to attend trainings on X, Y, and Z terrible new policy coming from the administration or harming Black immigrants. So at UndocuBlack is a page that I would offer up. And then finally, if you are somebody who's kind of still getting your feet wet and just trying to learn about what we mean by the diversity of the Black immigrant community. UndocuBlack partnered with a few other advocacy organizations, so Forward.us, Haitian Bridge Alliance, to put together a fact sheet on Black immigrants in the US, who they are, where they live, what languages do they speak. And so I'll drop that fact sheet here. It's meant to be a starting point. Again, the onus is really on educators to really take on that challenge of learning about Black immigrant students specifically. But I'll start us off there too, by putting that fact sheet in the chat.
Yeah, for me, I have a list that I'm gonna read that I prepared. But I just also wanted to echo that Black immigrants come in all, all countries, the Caribbean, Africa, and so forth. And I think sometimes we forget that Black immigrants in general, Black immigrants, like all other immigrants, are unaccompanied minors. It's not just the Latino community immigrants that people always associated with. It's not. It's all immigrants. Black immigrants are a part of that too. Black immigrants live in mixed households where a parent is legal here and the children are not, or a big sister or a little brother. There is all that's going on in the families also. Black families have all the different statuses that you can imagine that immigration provides. They have that. So it's important. And the young people are affected. Young people are immigrants too. We always tend to think of the older immigrants, right? The parents or maybe the young adults. But the 7-year-old is also undocumented, and we forget that, right? So how do we support all these types of Black immigrant students, in the community and in the schools? So I like to share the special immigrant juvenile status. Black immigrants hardly ever go for that because they don't have the information. The schools don't have the information. They don't know how to get the information, and they don't know what it is. So I'm not going to go into it, but the acronyms are SIJ, SIJS. Let's look it up. I think it's a resource that schools have to have. So we share it with schools, even though they can't talk immigration, but a teacher can introduce that to a student when they find out their information. So it's something to have. The New York State Dream Act, we fought hard for that. Schools never share that information about going to college with students. The New York State Dream Act is there for everyone who's undocumented to apply for out of high school. They should do it. And then we have the Dream US Scholarship. Like the undocumented students who came in middle school, they qualify for it. It depends on when you came in. Schools hardly ever help these students to apply for the Dream US scholarship. Now, the language interpreter bank to NYC, so families are able to get translation. Sometimes the translation in the public school, they don't work very well, or to go to social services. So there is a space for that. The NYC Mayors of Immigrant Affairs, there's a no commissioner now. We use it for information, right? There's a lot of, you need to know about organizations to support your school. Like you want to find an African serving organization, you want to find a Haitian serving organization, you can just go to the website and look up that information, especially educators, so you can have it for your students. NYC Care, for medical care, right? If immigrants don't have insurance and so forth, you can go there and get some care. The Door, 12 to 21, the Door has a great new building. They do so much that they're in the city. We have to go to them, right? And get access to what they have. They have mental health support, immigration support. They're a great partner for us. Our students go there. We try to give that information to schools so people can go in there. The iCare legal services for students under 18, for young people under 18 years old to have access to if you're being deported or, the HUD stuff. The Brave House, also for young immigrant refugee women, 16 to 24. People should know about that. And then don't forget ID NYC. They're back and running. If you don't have an ID, help people get their IDs. You can be undocumented and still get an ID. Toward Brooklyn, you can make an appointment, or there are different locations where you can walk in. You can go on the website and get the information. Black immigrants need our support, and they need the resources in all the different languages, right? So they can also thrive in the city.
Thank you so much. And at this point, we are going to open it up to some questions from our participants. Carmina?
So we have a couple of questions here in the Q&A. There's one, do you have any advice or best practices for community college educators serving a high number of Black immigrant students, especially when the college leadership pushes back on advocacy due to the current administration? If anyone can tap into this.
I can jump in. I mean, I think, right, it's no secret the Trump administration's targeting of higher ed. We're sensitive to that, but I think that's still not a reason to push the leadership in higher ed institutions to do better by immigrant students. And so often this means pushing them to create scholarship opportunities work opportunities, any opportunity that is made available to U.S. citizen college students, I would argue is the right or should exist for students who don't have legal status in the country. And there are workarounds, right? And that needs to continue to be at the forefront. And so I think that yes, maybe colleges are shy about advocacy, in the way that we normally think of advocacy, right? Being out there about the DREAM Act and all the things. But advocacy also looks like creating funds and creating resources for students who we serve, right? And so that doesn't have to be, those things can be done and not be on the radar of the Trump administration, right? There's so many things that can be done locally and made available locally on community college campuses that don't require, right, like a whole big campaign that we've seen the administration target. So I would say continuing to push leadership to whatever exists for students who are not undocumented, creating that for undocumented students, and it can be done. The feet just kind of have to be held to the fire.
I would just add something briefly, a couple of things. I think one, we have to remember that people like Frederick Douglass and others during the time of chattel slavery in this country learned how to read because people dared to teach them when it was against the law. Not when it was frowned upon, not when people would bucket you, but when it was literally against the law. Right. And so I think people are going to have to reach into their courage bag, reach into their creativity bag, and reach into their community bag to decide what are they willing to do in spite of the institutions that folks are in. And to add to that, I think it's like finding other people that think the same way, that are interested in the same thing, that feel the same way, and creating some things that are outside of the institutions. Much of what we're going to have to do right now is going to have to be outside of the institutions. We understand that because we understand the institutions are not always going to hold up and do what they're supposed to do. And so I think it's important to reach into those bags of creativity, of courage, of community, and then connect up with other people who are also reaching into that bag and create those, underground railroad type scenarios where people actually continue to provide resources, help, protection that people need.
Thank you, Nana. And you talked about this previously, but someone is asking, how do you navigate the erasure of Black immigrants when doing your advocacy work? And how can people become involved in your organizations? So building up on what you said throughout the session and just now, I think it speaks to this question as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main piece of it is number one, storytelling, letting folks tell their story, giving people an opportunity to talk about what they are dealing with, what their needs are, what their concerns are, what their joys are, right? What their visions are, their dreams are, from a position particularly of resilience, right? And of resistance, as opposed to what people typically do, which is almost like oh, look at them, the Sarah McLachlan sound in the background. You could be talking about Black immigrants, or you could be talking about abused dogs, right? But really looking at Black immigrants as people of dignity, of humanity, who have stories to tell, that are stories that show what it is that we are doing, and that give an understanding of, I say all the time, the face of resistance and resilience in this country is a Black face, and it includes a Black immigrant face. And so we do our best, as do other organizations such as Undocu Black, I know Sister Darnell's organization, to make sure that people can see who we are. And then it's centering. Remember to center, remembering not to put people on the margins, understanding that truly when Black people are free, everyone is free. And if Black people are not free, no one is free. And if someone really believes that, then you understand that Black people should be centered. And so in the conversation of whether, of freedom in this country, whether we're talking about immigration or outside of immigration, 20% or 25% of the Black population who are Black immigrants should also be centered in the conversation of what freedom and liberation is.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add in addition to that is also putting some money where putting your money where your mouth is, right? Like all of our work needs funding. All of our work needs support, especially when so many funding streams are under attack or are being rolled back, right? And so, how do you support our work? Bigger than a follow or a like, I think you look at donating some money and resources and time to Baji, to UndocuBlack, to the orgs doing the work. And I think that really is a big way to kind of again move from allyship to being a conspirator, right? Like using your material resources to advance the work of the folks whose work you believe in.
Exactly. And then for me, I mean, I always say, I'm an immigrant. I've been here since I was 13. So I was a future immigrant. So I'm here. So these young people, these students of future older immigrants that can be leaders, that can do what we're doing. They're amazing. If we give them everything that they need, if we show their faces that they're visible, yes, Black immigrants are here and they need all these resources and opportunities, all this funding and community support, school support, higher education, everything, undocumented or not, then they have this beautiful future there, just like I have. So I think it's important to see it that way because immigrants, I mean, with everything they're not going anywhere. Okay. Like, for example, Haitians are not going back to Haiti with everything that's going on and all the other countries that have been affected by this country. Where are they going? We're here because you were there. So we're here. So how can we support these young people to continue to grow and move forward and have the future that they deserve in this country? They are the future of tomorrow. I know people don't want to think about Black immigrants being the future, but Black people, just like Nana said, we're here. So we're here and we need everything to thrive.
Thank you, Darnell, so much. Another question here. Are there any schools that are doing a good job of supporting Black immigrants? If so, what are they doing differently?
What's the question? Are there any schools?
Are there any schools that are doing a good job in
Mm-hmm.
supporting? And if so, what are they doing differently?
Oh my God, there are, and I see Neda is here from the Internationals Network. The Internationals Network schools, for example, they've been around for a long time. We don't have enough of them. We need more of them. Currently, Flamboyant, we have a campaign about transfer schools like Manhattan Comprehensive, Emma Lazarus, LES Web that will support older immigrant students to really be successful, graduate high school, and move on. But we don't have any school like that in Brooklyn. So we need schools in Brooklyn and Queens where most immigrant students, most immigrant live, period, where these students can have access to a school that support them with social services, with legal services, with internship, with wraparound support so they can thrive and graduate high school, have internships and so forth. So there are so many great examples of those schools, but we don't have enough of them. Like in Brooklyn, we don't have one for 17 to 21-year-old students. In Queens either. So we want schools like that all over the city that can really support students. And then not to hate, a high school for hip hop just opened up in the Bronx. I mean, and everybody's like, really? We need this high school. We need that school. We need ABCD. So schools are opening all the time, but no one is focusing on the need of immigrant students inside the public schools. So we're pushing for that. Schools where, especially in these days, that immigrant students don't have to get on the train and ride for 30, 40 minutes and the fear of ICE is looming all over in the subway and they have to do that. Parents are afraid when there can be a school here where they can walk to or they can take a bus to. So that's what we need for our communities right now. But there are many, many examples of great schools that are serving immigrants properly, that understand them, that respect them. Respect them. That's important. That value their culture. Like Nana was saying before, that you're from Mauritania, where is it? They find out and they support that student, right? So we need more and more and more schools and people like the people who work in the school that fully understand what it is to be an immigrant. Yes.
The only other thing I'd add, and I think Nana said it before, but I think this question just, right, like schools that are friendly and doing a good job to supporting their Black students, right, taking those best practices, those will be transferable too. So schools that offer restorative justice lenses towards discipline, schools that have moved away from officers and kind of school to prison pipeline systems, right? Those will do a good job at supporting Black immigrant students. I've been out of the education space for a minute now, but I think that, so I can't name specifics. I'm glad Darnell is here to name the specifics, but I think, right, like thinking about anti-racist institutions that are doing the work, right, and are critically interrogating being abolitionists, right, and abolition education and freedom schools, taking best practices from there certainly will serve Black immigrant students as well.
Thank you so much, Astu. Another question here. What are the main challenges you encounter? I'm sorry, Nana, were you gonna add to that? No? What are the main challenges you encounter when trying to get immigrant parents involved, especially in these days with the continuous fear and stress families are going through? Another question from one of our participants.
The reality of it is, parents, I'm a parent of four students. It's really hard for parents to get involved because we work. So that's a reality of life in New York City. I know they want parents to get involved all the time, but it's parents really that are not working that can fully get involved, like in the schools. But it's important for parents to understand that they have access to the school, that you can schedule an appointment with a teacher, right? You're allowed that. You can walk into the school anytime you want and demand and ask to see someone and talk to someone. So often Black immigrant communities, we don't know that, right? Because the school is not telling you that, because they don't really want, all this parent engagement that they're talking about, they don't really want you in the school, right? Because you start asking questions, you start, and people are freaking out. But it's important for parents to go to orientation if there is one, right? For them to know that, okay, this is what's going to be happening to my child and so forth. Especially with the higher grades, right? They always make us think, Black parents, Black immigrant parents, because it's all one. Black parents are not involved and so forth. Actually, at the high school level, no parent is involved. Parents are involved in elementary school, okay? Because they have to pick up the child. But the rest of the grades, they're not. But it's important to have engagement. It's important to understand what's going on. It's important for the parents, to me, that you have access to your teacher, that you can email the teacher, that you can call the teacher sends information, they send the phone number. You can get on a Zoom with the teacher, right? You need to, you can have access to the curriculum, to what's going on. And I think that's important, that just to know you have that choice, that you have that option to connect with the school is powerful, right? Instead of, just sitting there and not knowing what's going on. But when parents do know that, yes, I can go to the school. Yes, I can go, I can talk to my child's teacher if there is a problem, there's an issue with grades and so forth. They need to know that. They need to know that the school is for them, that they have access, that they can enter the school anytime that they want to.
Let me just add, there's two things I would add. And plus, as people do on Zoom, all that Darnell said, but two things I would add. One is the opportunity to have these conversations outside of the hours that people associate with the lifestyle when, white women could stay at home and take care of stuff, leave it to Beaver. I never watched these shows. I'm not that old yet, but you know what I'm saying? That kind of life. So the meetings are at 1, the meetings are at 3, the meetings are at 4. It's like people can't go to those meetings. So getting information and providing opportunities for parents to be able to meet out, as Darnell's pointing out during times and various times, because people have various schedules. Everyone doesn't have a desk job, right? Particularly in the Black immigrant world. So giving people various opportunities and giving people group opportunities. A lot of times we find, whether it be when that we're talking about mental health, or they're talking about education and our children, that for Black immigrants, often we actually prefer to have conversations that are with other people as opposed to just one-on-one. And so if you have the PTAs don't exist in a lot of schools anymore, right? But if you have the opportunities that are created so that people can have a safe space, that's important, a safe space. That you got to build the trust for that, for people to be able to come at a time that works for most folks, to be able to have those conversations, then you're going to get more parent engagement. I was raised by parents that are outside of here not to talk to school people about anything. Okay. And my parents were paying for school and they still were told that because teachers were a problem. Teachers were going to tell on you, or teachers were not going to understand cultural things that were happening with you and why you eat this and why you do that and all these other things. And the next thing you knew, no, this could become some kind of bigger problem. So there's a danger sometimes in being more engaged as a parent, unless the conditions are created to create that safe space. So I would say, some of it is time and all of that, but some of it literally is creating safe spaces where parents feel like their engagement is not going to turn out to harm them and to bite them later.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I wanted to add also the cultural aspect of Black immigrants, families getting involved. Culturally, like for Haiti, for example, culturally, parents don't get involved, right? They leave everything up to the school. So it's the same mentality when they come here. It's really, people have to learn those things. And I think sometimes there isn't grace for us, right? For Black immigrants to learn that. This is new. They're learning so much. The transition to a new country, you don't speak the language, everything is different, right? And I think sometimes there isn't grace for people to just take a breather and learn the new system here. And that's why it's important to connect with the community organization, right? For example, the schools we work with, they can call us and we contact the family. We're able to speak to them in their language culturally to understand what's going on. So the more we have those partnerships and those connections, and of course we need more funding. Thank you, Astu, for that. We need more funding to have those connections to happen, because there are so many groups on the ground that are doing this work, but they don't have the money, right? Available to them, and the schools are not giving them any. So they're we care, okay? I care. I want the parent to understand what's going on, right? I want the parent to understand the high school choice process that happens and how to pick a school and so forth, that they don't get enough information on. And then sometimes, I always give the example of a school trip. Like Haitians, they won't let their children go on a school trip, but we're able to call them and say, no, this is a science trip. This is this. They're going to go for 2 days. And many students have been able to go on trips, but the schools could not explain that, right? The school thinks, the parents don't care or is not engaged, but there is much more than that. So I think we have to do that work. And then, as an educator, people in the school, it's much more than the student sitting there. It's so much more that you have to understand and value and understand about the family, about the student, in order to get the connections and make that engagement. But once you make it, it's wonderful, right? So everybody has a part in it.
And I don't know how we're doing on time, but I would just
good.
offer making the schoolhouse a resource hub in and of itself, right? So often we think community organization here, school here, and they're in completely different spheres. But one way to increase parent engagement, right? And make parents, yes, make them feel safe, child. Don't be anti-Black. Don't make people feel like if they talk to you, they're going to lose their kids. But also, right, bring all the resources that they need and have them be at the school so that, right, it's not just the school is the place that I send my kids to get an education, and I rely on the expertise of the teachers, and I don't want to step on toes, but I'm going to go to the school. I have a question about housing and affordable housing. Oh yeah, there's a resource hub at the school. Let me go over there. If I want to be connected with, I need an immigration lawyer, right? And I know that the school has that resource, right, of trusted partners. I'm going to go to the school. And so it's kind of closing the space that exists between community organizations and CBOs and the schoolhouse. And I think the more we can close that gap, I think that is really going to go a long way to bringing parents into the schoolhouse, right? And bringing parents and educators closer together.
Thanks so much. We still have just a few minutes, and so I want to offer the opportunity to, well, we've heard several themes today. Support is not a passive verb. We need to do something. We need to collaborate. We need to learn. We need to dig into our pockets. There are many different ways that we can support. So I wanted to just offer you a last closing remarks, thinking of, even outside of New York City, because CUNY-I is a statewide project. If someone is looking to do something tomorrow, what might they do? Or is there one other thing that you would like our participants to go away with today? We'll start with Nana.
So I think what I would love for folks to go away with today, because we've shared so many resources and hopefully those are going to be shared out with folks so they can grab that, but really is an understanding of the need to center Black immigrants, not only as, not as a song of sorrow, right? But as a cheer, right? As a clarifying call in terms of what it is that our needs, challenges, and aspirations are, and the ways in which addressing those needs, challenges, and aspirations help, again, to free us all. To see us not as a monolith and to understand that even beyond immigration status and the various things that we have there, we also have all these other intersections, right, that are around gender identity, that are around sexual orientation, or there's a lot of discrimination that's faced by Black queer students, and they're navigating both home, community, culture, as well as what they deal with at school. Disabled students that are Black immigrants, often coming from countries that may not have all of the things for disabilities, and really having to have that as an additional piece that they have to deal with. Some of these disabilities that they don't even know about, right? Some issues that people have health-wise that they don't even know about. So really not just centering Black immigrants and students, but also taking the time to see where some of these other intersections are and looking at that not as an act of charity, right? But as an act of solidarity. And at the end of the day, if all of our freedom is tied together, as an act of self and community interest. And thank you so very much for having me on.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Astu?
My last invitation would be for educators to step into their power as advocates. So we know that if we're trying to advocate for somebody, right? First, we get educated. We serve as a resource hub to help connect folks, right? We sometimes serve as someone to translate really dense information or inaccessible information. And we also try to uplift stories and shape narrative, right? And interrupt narratives. And so I would offer that educators really kind of step into their power as advocates, advocating on behalf of the immigrant students and families that they serve, using advocacy to get resources for those students and families, and also empowering the students and families that they serve to share their stories. And if they're not maybe inclined to share their stories because of fear, because of all the things that we're seeing that are real out there, right, in terms of people being afraid, I would encourage educators to uplift the stories that they see every day, because those can be really potent in disrupting the narratives that are out there that are incorrect, but yet pervasive, right? And so enticing to so many of the folks that we share our country with. So step into your advocacy, right? Become an advocate for the communities that you serve.
Thank you. And Darnell?
Yeah, for me, it's about I think the schools, educators, adults. If you have a Black immigrant student in your life, I think it's important. I know what we're talking about here is all grim and stuff, but our organizations, along with doing this hard work, but we have fun. There is joy. There is a lot happening. That I know at my organization, there's always a party going on, right? So it's important for educators, people, to connect these young people with their interests, right? Are you into the art? Do you sing? Do you dance? Like, how can I help you dance more? I can help you, get to an art class. What can I contribute to your life? Because we are going through a lot as communities, as Black immigrant communities, and I think, and as Black immigrant communities, we're all of it. We're artists, we're dancers, we're writers, we're poets. There is so much of that going on. And the schools don't even have music classes, they don't have art program, they don't have anything. It's bare. So if as educators, people in the schools, adults, if we can connect students with, there are so many free programs in New York City, activities going on that these students can connect with and find a bit of themselves and chill a little bit, because there's a lot going on with immigration and ICE and so forth. I think we owe it to them. Connect with a community organization, do service work. All that is important to connect young people to New York City, even more to the work with other people. Our organization, for example, in a couple of weeks, where a group of us were going to another youth organization to visit and learn about each other and so forth. All that matters for young people to understand that they're not alone, because they're going to meet other young people that are going to the same thing. So it's important to have all those connections.
Thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you all. This has been amazing. And we hope to continue to work with you and support the work that you do and find ways that we can also do the work. And
Thank
so thank you so much to all of our participants for joining us today. We're happy that you were with us. Continue to connect with CUNY-I, join our listserv, connect with the organizations that were here today, and have a wonderful rest of the school year.
Thank you to the panelists. What you shared today should be required viewing for every educator. So we have the recording, at least we will disseminate that along with the resources. And thank you all for coming.